Welcome to Hallyu Leaders and Experts, a storytelling initiative by our team here at Hallyu Con and Uri Insights. My name is Lachey Ben Salmi, award-winning author, TEDx speaker, and proud co-founder of Uri Insights and Hallyu Con, and I'm so thrilled to guide you through today's discussion with our special guests. Now, at the heart of this initiative is our mission to spotlight the voices, the journeys, the stories, and the perspectives of influential figures shaping the global Korean wave. But today we are here with a very, very special guest who is extremely inspiring to so many. So Judy, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, nice to meet you, Shay, and see you again, actually. And hello, everyone. I'm Judy Joo. I'm a chef, a restaurateur, a TV personality, and author. Yeah, and a career changer.
And so
Yep,
much more.
so many things. Yeah,
Judy
I'm
is,
maybe what do they say? Jack of all trades, but master of none. I
I
do
wouldn't say that
everything
you've got into really high levels in all of the careers you pursued. So
We'll
Judy
see.
is
Yeah.
so inspiring. So we hope that many of you listening and watching today will be able to take away some really interesting points that can inspire you to really tap in and pursue whatever you're passionate about as well, whilst being a cultural advocate and ambassador
Yeah, thank
internationally.
you. Yeah.
So, Judy, our very first question for you. So, you've been a pioneering voice in bridging the gap between South Korea, the UK, America, and beyond. And
Yeah.
in terms of making Korean cuisine mainstream to Western audiences, when you look
Mhm.
back on your journey so far, what sort
Yeah.
of legacy do you hope to leave behind, not just as a
Gosh.
chef, but as a cultural ambassador?
It's kind of crazy because I grew up being embarrassed by my lunchbox. Like I didn't want my mom to pack me anything Korean. I wanted just like ham and cheese sandwiches, like Lunchables, all this stuff. And now it really is like a full circle moment to be able to serve Korean food in some of the biggest arenas in the world. It's just mind blowing. Like I never thought that I'd be able to serve like kimchi fried rice at Citi Field, home of the Mets in New York, at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, like it's just crazy. And so I was like almost like embarrassed about my Koreanism. Like, can I say that Koreanism about being Korean, when I was a little kid, because nobody knew where Korea was. They never heard of it. They would just, call me Chinese or Japanese or anything. And I always was like, no, I'm Korean. But then like, after a while you just like give up and just like, and so kind of being that like young little girl that was like unsure of her identity, what it meant. Nobody knew what it was. And like, I wouldn't say not altogether super proud of being Korean, but like loving my culture, like loving the food I grew up with and eating it and knowing deep down inside that it was really special and I liked it. Um, and then now, where K-pop Demon Hunters is the number one watched movie on Netflix, like it's mind-blowing stuff that's going on now. So, and I've been kind of waving the Korean flag and like, pounding the drum about Korean food for a long time now. I'm 50 now. So this is, I was way before the whole Hallyu wave and way before like woke or Me Too or anything or like diversity mandates. So, like I was really ahead of the curve when, Korean Food Made Simple came on the air, my first cookbooks, everything. I was pretty much like it was like me and Manchi were the only ones on the scene. And so we're kind of like the OG of the Korean food cooking world, I think. And now there are lots of younger people coming up, which is great. But I guess in terms of legacy, I would say that, I don't think a lot about it, but I guess I would love to be remembered as one of the first, to really pioneer the way and, made it easier for a lot of the people coming after me and Manchi. I think that like she and I kind of, you know, um, made it a little bit easier for everyone else, like introducing things, kind of breaking down, explaining things in an easy way for people to understand, and kind of, I guess, almost like demystifying our culture and our food to a wider audience. And now, particularly with me being in these huge arenas, like talk about mass market, like I am not in, kind of Korea towns. I'm not in ethnic enclaves or cities, you know what I mean? Like I am in Madison Square Garden. I'm in Barclays Center. I'm in Tottenham Hotspurs. I'm in Brentford Football Club. I'm in City Field, some of the biggest arenas in the world where these people are not necessarily seeking out Korean food, but they might stumble upon it. And the fact that I'm able to get my foot into the door at these places just shows you how in vogue and zeitgeist Korean food is. And so me being the first Korean person to kind of like, break through these, kind of walls and say like, you know what, like your fans, doesn't matter if it's, Premier League soccer, football, or basketball or ice hockey, etc., might want to have a taste of Korean food. And it's popular enough that you as an arena might want to look at selling it. So yeah, I guess that's a long-winded answer.
Inspiring. No, I love it. And you touched on so many different things there. And I think it's quite a universal experience. I'm second generation, and that lunchbox experience of not wanting to take your native cuisine to school and that apprehension. And that's
Mm,
changed so much now
so
to the
much.
point where
Yeah.
kids nowadays are
Yeah.
like, no, I want that in school. And my
And
friends
they're like
think it's
trading
cool.
with their friends, you know what I mean? Like I want your, it's just like Jamaican patty and I'll trade you my kimbap or something, or like I want your empanada, or something.
Exactly.
And it's really fun to see that like that all ethnic cuisine now is really kind of having a moment and people are craving more diverse flavors and spices. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Exactly. And before we dive into some of the other questions, I think what I really love about this entire movement internationally and globally is the fact that yes, it's nice to have viral moments and yes, it's nice to spotlight various cultures, but it helps to build a foundational respect for one another, which helps to
Oh,
create a more sustainable exchange of cultures. So it's so nice
definitely.
to see.
I mean, food is definitely the first point of entry for many people to learning about a culture. You might not go to Korea, you might not go to, Peru or Germany or something, but you might, go into a Japanese restaurant or Korean restaurant or a Caribbean restaurant or German restaurant, and that'll be somebody's first point of entry and first reference point into learning more about a culture. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's so nice to see globally. And I think it's nice that it's kind of being pioneered by the youth and these
Yeah.
young kids and these young people that are now, because of the work of the generations prior, they can unapologetically represent their
Yeah.
cultures and have
Yeah.
that culture exchange. So it's so, so
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think it has a lot to do with like people's palates changing. Like people want to have more spice and kind
exactly.
of ethnic flavors and, from all around the world. Like I know particularly like, I mean, I am in the industry, but just seeing like young people eat now, they're getting in line at the festivals for like all different types of food. Yeah. Even spices that you've never heard of, included in these things. So it's great.
It's really nice. And I think outside of just cuisine and food, it kind of encourages that younger generation to explore more, to be open to other
Yeah.
people. And like you said, it's that first touch point of, oh, I've tried the food. Now I want to learn a bit more about the culture. And then now I have a bit more empathy because we're not so different. So it can be such a powerhouse in creating world peace without being dramatic. But it's
Yeah.
those little seeds that lead to that bigger change.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Lovely. So now moving on to our next question for you. So Korean food has often been misunderstood or underrepresented globally. So how have you approached the challenge of making Korean cuisine more accessible while still retaining its authenticity and not having to water anything down?
Yeah, so I mean authenticity is kind of a loaded word these days, because like what is authentic? And I feel that, food is changing so much every single day and today's invention really is tomorrow's tradition. Like something like Korean fried chicken. My parents did not grow up eating that. That's something that came over with the war and the GIs, etc. Same with Korean corn dogs, same with Spam, all these things. But now like these products are really kind of very much Korean in their own unique way. So and with immigration patterns, like Chinese American food, Chinese Indian food, like all of these things are actually authentic in their own right. So, like I feel like authenticity is a bit of a interpretation, and also when you're opening up restaurants all over the world and cooking all over the world, like you have to localize cuisine to some extent. or else you're going to go out of business. You know what I mean? Like it's period, it's at the end of the day, like you are part of a business, and all restaurants do this. Like like a restaurant like McDonald's is very different in Indonesia versus it is in London versus it is, in Peru, etc. And that's because like you have to just cater to the local market. And and I saw this specifically, when I had my previous restaurants, Jinju, when the stuff I could serve on the menu in London versus the items I could serve in Hong Kong were extremely different.
Mhm.
So in Hong Kong, I could go punchier, I could go spicier, I could go, like more kind of like, I guess, authentic, if you're going to call it authentic, with some of the more kind of punchier dishes of Korea. Where in London, it was still very much like, I had Jinju ages ago. People didn't even know what Korean food was. I had the top food critics coming in and comparing me to Thai food. Like they had no idea what they were eating. And
Mm.
so it was more of a slow introduction, kind of the greatest hits like dumplings, noodles, fried chicken, bulgogi, kind of Korean barbecue. And, we experimented, like we did put some more, I guess, um, I don't know, like I guess like more um spicier jigaes or soups on the menu, like budae and stuff like that didn't sell. You know what I mean? If it doesn't sell, I'm not going to keep it on the menu. I'm going to put something on the menu that actually sells. It just doesn't make commercial sense. The kitchen has to prep it. You have to order all the ingredients for it. You can't force food down people's throats. You got to pay rent at the end of the day. And the real estate on your menu is very valuable real estate. You have to have things that just move, or else it just goes in the trash. So um it's a fine line of how authentic, I guess, you can go, or how punchy or how spicy, you can go. And also you want to have mass appeal. You want kids to be able to eat at your restaurant, and they can't have super spicy foods, like so it's different, and we change our menu according to the demographic that we're serving. Yeah.
Mm. I think that's really interesting that you've taken that sort of standpoint over the years of let's not water down the flavors, but let's just see what can appeal to X audience. I think that's a really
Yeah.
interesting approach to take.
Definitely, definitely. And also, particularly with Korean fried chicken, Korean fried chicken usually it comes with the sauce tossed over the chicken. So we serve ours on the side because some of those sauces are really spicy and punchy, and some people like to dip or to drizzle or to toss, so it's an option for the chicken to come, tossed in the sauce before. But most people like to have it on the side. And actually that now they're double dipping. They'll go to two or three sauces, and they'll, go for a multi-layer kind of concoction that they'll make up on their own, which is fun. Yeah.
Exactly, seeing what people create on their own as like having the
Yeah.
food as the base, but how do they personalize it? I think that's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah.
And are there any specific misconceptions or stereotypes that you've found over the years people have about Korean food that you felt really compelled to challenge or to create a different perception around?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that people definitely think that Korean food is all really spicy, and it's not. Um, People also find that or think that Korean food is just barbecue, and it's just so meat heavy. But actually, as you probably know, Korea has a long tradition of Buddhism and temple cuisine and vegetarian and like vegan cuisine. So there really is something for everyone, and I definitely try hard to talk about that a lot and showcase a lot of the dishes that are not spicy, or talk about, and also have a lot of dishes that are, more in the realm of plant forward eating.
Exactly. I think that's a really unique perspective because there are so many stews and things that include tofu in Korean cuisine.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of foreigners coming to Korea, they initially go for like the tteokbokkis and the spicy things,
Yeah.
which are lovely, but there's so many layers, as are with other territories, to
Yeah.
Korean cuisine and what that
Yeah.
means.
And you mentioned tofu, and I think tofu is really misunderstood in the West, because in Asia, tofu is a food in its own right, and it's not a vegetarian product only for vegetarians. Like we mix it and we eat it with meat all the time. Like it's in a lot of soups, but the soups will be a chicken stock or a beef stock or anything, and there's meat with the tofu, etc. So it's considered and used just like another vegetable. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so nice because I guess there are similar I guess, ingredients across different territories and they're used in so many different ways. Whereas I guess, although tofu has had a presence in the West, it's kind of, like you said, this alternative or for vegans or for vegetarians. Whereas in other cultures, it's just a part of the cuisine and it's had it
It is
amongst other things.
literally a food in its own right. Yeah. T Tofu. Yeah. It's not a punishment. I
Exactly.
feel
We
like
enjoy
people
it.
think that it's just like, yeah, that like, no, you must eat tofu. And like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny. And in many ways, food can be a powerful form of soft power. So what role do you think Korean cuisine plays in shaping how people understand Korean identity, values, and history?
Oh, I think that Korean food reflects the Korean people entirely. And the food tells the story of a country in terms of its history. And Korea is a great example of that. It tells the story of feast, famine, occupation, wars, recession, etc. Korea was occupied by Japan for 35 years, and there's so many, and because of the American GI presence, there's so many foods that came over to Korea. And after the war, Korea was a very, very poor country, and so many rations were coming in and wheat was coming in, and that's how noodles really took, hold, etc. Even like I think Portuguese missionaries were traveling with Japanese troops, and that's how chilies came into the country. Chilies are not indigenous to Korea, so the food directly reflects the history of a culture and tells a story and the um of the country in so many different ways. And and I like to say that, like Korean people are very spicy and fiery, and they wear their hearts on their sleeves. The food's very vibrant, it's punchy, it's full of umami. All the fermentation, the flavors are so rich and complex, just with the use of soy sauce and the use of fermented soybean paste, the doenjang and the gochujang, all of these changs, make the food like really deep and complex. And I feel like the people are kind of echoing that as well. Koreans like very much wear their hearts on their sleeves, and what you see is what you get. And they're kind of known as the Italians of Asia, and I fully kind of believe that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
That feels like it makes a lot of sense because, like you
Yeah,
said, that
like
that spiciness, that passion.
dramatic, like there's a lot
Exactly.
of passion, there's a lot of drama. I mean, just like this is why, K-dramas, like the passion and the I guess the I don't know, like just the nature of the cultures, everything's just very dramatic. And I think that that's just reflected through the food and everything. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting actually to look at that perspective of what dishes within X culture kind of reflect different things from the people. So that spiciness kind of reflects that passion and that
Yeah.
open-heartedness. And I think the fermentation really reflects the
Mhm.
resilience to survive no matter what. We're
Definitely.
going
Yeah.
to push through, we're going to unite. So I think
Yeah.
it's so lovely to
Yeah,
look at. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So, next, has there been a moment in your career or your life where food has opened a door that a conversation wouldn't have?
Oh, I think that happens all the time. Every day. I don't know. I mean, I feel that food, if you're not talking about food even directly, food is the medium to which conversation happens around all the time, There's always food involved, particularly being Korean. It doesn't matter how sacred the event you're going to or how celebratory. It could be a funeral, it could be a wedding, it could be you're going to church, you can go to temple. There's always food involved all the time. And Koreans in particular are just obsessed with food. And yeah, it's food is the entryway, I feel like almost like an icebreaker to so many important conversations that I've had in my life. I mean, I can't think of anything in particular, but just even like with food diplomacy, like if you can break bread with somebody, like you can find a thread of commonality and find a way to peacefully, like work out a problem or world peace or something, come to some kind of compromise somewhere.
Exactly, because I
I
guess
feel.
even the experience of sitting down to eat is such an
Yeah,
intimate and vulnerable
definitely.
experience because one, you're trusting whoever's cooked for you, you're perhaps being having to be open to a new form of cuisine if that isn't native to you. So it is a very, very intimate experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I think conversations around tables are some of the most important conversations that have ever happened. Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
and now segueing a little bit into
Mm.
innovation and tradition, which we've touched on slightly, but
Yeah.
you often tend to blend, I guess, modern techniques with traditional Korean flavors. How
Mhm.
do you navigate that balance between innovation and preservation? I know you have such a beautiful background in that your father actually escaped North Korea. Have any of those traditions or what he's used to eating during that time period influenced the way that you approach cuisine today?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, some dishes I just leave alone, it's talking about like North Korean dishes, like something like the ice cold noodles, the naengmyeon, That's just kind of a bowl, a dish that like maybe I might change some of the toppings and things like that, but um you know, it just, I don't know, like I don't actually make a conscious decision about what's to preserve or stuff. I kind of just go all by taste, maybe. And I'm like, oh, that could be, more interesting, or in my opinion, or maybe I'll jazz that part of it up. Maybe I'll bring out this flavor a little bit more, or change the plating a little bit, or I'll taste something like, oh, that would be so good if it was added to this. So it's but every chef does that, I think, like food's constantly evolving in every single culture. The food in America that they ate in the 70s is so different from the food that they eat now, thank God. You know what I mean? Like all that gelatin and aspect and everything, so food is constantly evolving, and new things are invented all the time. So there are certain things though, like that, like, if it tastes Korean, or if it tastes, Chinese, or it tastes Japanese, that like people are just automatically going to know, like the same way, like if you look at architecture, you're like, it looks Korean, it looks, whatever, you can kind of tell. So I think that as long as there's like, for me, as long as there's like a strand and a strong pillar of DNA of it being Korean, I guess, that's kind of what I'm aiming for, but some of the times, like, I'm cooking a lot for these high-end events, etc. And like Korean desserts are not like all the like rice cakes and stuff. That's never gonna fly in that kind of setting, you know what I mean? So I usually take, Western desserts, and I fuse some like Asian or Korean flavors into them, so is that like pillar necessarily Korean? No, it's not. Maybe it's more French or Italian, depending on where the dessert comes from. But I am just kind of accenting it with a Korean flavor or something. So it really varies, and I change things all the time. But I feel like that every chef does that in order to make a dish more reflect their own personality and put their own little twist on it. Otherwise, every chef would be cooking the same thing, and it'd be very, very boring, So, especially with my other Korean chefs, like we might look at like Korean barbecue and like, yeah, okay, like the end result will kind of look the same, but everybody's Korean barbecue is going to taste slightly different because of the technique that we apply, because of the ingredients that we've used, etc. And same with kimchi, like it's kimchi, but kimchi has like a gazillion different ingredients in the way that you can make it. So yeah, everybody wants to put their own little personality on things.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. No, I think that's so interesting. And as we segue on, I would like to think of Judy as my Barbie reference. You've lived so many different lives, and it's so nice to see how you've sort of, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but how you've sort of seamlessly pivoted from being an engineer to then working Wall Street to now being this chef and pioneer for Korean cuisine. What has been a moment in your journey where you've just sort of stopped and one, taking it all in, but realize there are so many interchangeable skills that you've learned at each point in your journey?
Mm. I feel that everything I learned up to becoming a chef helped me become a better chef. And especially with all of the different lines that I'm going down, writing books, being on television, all of these things, because at the end of the day, you're running a business when you're a restaurateur. So all my finance really, really helped. I can, talk shop, I can raise money, I understand what profits mean, I understand margins. And then my major, I was an operations research major industrial engineering. So restaurants are all about operations, efficiency design, process flows, like where are you going to put everything? How does it work in the kitchen? What is the customer journey? What's the back of house journey? All of that is operations research. Also designing restaurants. I love that creative, talent behind it and the architecture, interior design. But at the end of the day, like is this chair comfortable but not too comfortable? That's all engineering, right? Are the surfaces, durable? Like, are they going to stain? Are they going to chip? All of this is all about engineering, human factors, ergonomics, etc. So I feel like I'm constantly using my engineering background. I'm constantly using my finance and business background. And of course, I went to cooking school too, and in terms of the creativity, etc. Like I'm using every single one of my hats, and then there's obviously a lot of writing when it comes to what I do also. And so, like having gone to university that, also, I was forced to take writing classes. I was forced to do all of that too. And even things like, I was in debate club and stuff. So the public speaking aspect, of that with the television and being able to make up, commentary on the fly and speak in sound bites and have a bit of a rich vocabulary when talking about food, all of that helps. Being able to read a teleprompter on the first try, So I think that all helps, and because if you can deliver a recipe to an editor at a magazine, it needs very little editing and it works, etc. And they're going to come back to you again, like it's kind of having the whole package now. It's not just about being able to cook. You have to be a business person. You have to be able to, kind of do all of these things if you kind of want to go and be able to put your career on the trajectory of, doing television, doing books, etc. All of these things. Yeah.
Exactly. And as we begin to close up, this conversation's been so interesting and there's so much more we could cover. So I definitely hope we get to have a follow-up. But
Yeah, definitely.
how do you feel as though you've played a part in shaping the perception of Korean and Asian chefs internationally? Because, of course, there are always perceptions, sometimes negative, about people from various backgrounds. So how have you played a part in reshaping those?
I feel that now people are more open and understanding that you can be a grandmaster, a three Michelin starred chef and be from Korea, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand, whatever. You don't just have to be from France. France obviously has laid the foundation and they're considered like the mother of all cuisine, but all these other countries deserve just as much respect. The technique to make certain things is just as difficult, just as hard, deserves just as much respect as other cultures as well. So, and I think that when people try the food and they try the flavors and they realize how much effort, thought, creativity, technique, time goes into making this, people are understanding that, ethnic food isn't, something that should just be, on the street and cheap. It's something that can actually be celebrated in the same way as many other Western cuisines are.
Yes, no, definitely. And now on to some of our quick fire questions as we begin
Yeah.
to wrap up. So
Okay.
no pressure.
Okay, I should have looked at those more.
So we would love to know what is one of your go-to comfort foods?
I would say Korean food is my go-to comfort food. It really is. It's kind of boring, but I grew up eating it and it runs in my veins. So yeah, particularly a certain stew, which is called sundubujigae, which is the soft tofu stew in a spicy broth with seafood and kimchi. That's like my ultimate comfort food dish.
Lovely. And kimchi, store-bought or homemade?
Oh, I make my own. It tastes totally different. It's a different product. It's like store-bought spaghetti sauce versus you making it, or your grandmother making it or your grandfather making it. Like it's a totally different experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay,
Mhm.
one ingredient, Korean ingredient that you think is slept on.
Um, Green ingredient that doesn't get. the attention it deserves. I would say the Korean plum extract that we use a lot in many different dishes, and particularly when it's pure and it's 100% made from plums. It is so fragrant. It's absolutely delicious. Yeah, I put it in my kimchi. I cook with it. I put a lot of like my like banchan vegetables, sometimes in my kalbi. It's such a beautiful ingredient, and you can even just like put it with water and drink it as a tea. It's really versatile. Yeah,
That's
I
so
love it.
true.
Mhm.
And what is one Korean dish that every person should try?
Bibimbap.
Mm.
I think it has a little bit of, but I'm such a veggie eater that I would say like, and if you're not a veggie, like I would say maybe just like Korean barbecue. Kalbi is such a crowd pleaser, and most people love steaks, and it, like just like the smell alone of it, of that meat with that marinade hitting the grills just gets everybody around. It just lures people to the grill. Yeah. If you haven't tried it, like you're really missing out. Mhm.
Well, and then finally, what word of advice would you give to someone who is wanting to make that pivot, but they're really scared that they're going perhaps from the engineering to wanting to be a chef? What word of wisdom would you give to them?
I would say it's a lot of hard work. I don't try to romanticize my journey at all. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but just don't give up. And if you believe in yourself and you believe in your product and what you're creating, just go for it. Yeah. If there's passion behind it and real passion, the paycheck will follow. Yeah.
I like that. If there's passion, the paycheck will follow.
It's true because, well, I feel like so many people give up and it's hard. It's really, I have more stories of rejection and failure than I do of success. Like it is really, really hard, but it's really hard making it in any industry, I think, if you really want to do it well. So yeah, let's go for it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Judy. I'm sure that listeners that were listening in and tuning into this discussion will honestly take so much away. And
Thank you.
hopefully, for anyone who hasn't quite delved into Korean cuisine, will feel inspired
Yeah,
to.
thank you. Don't forget to check out my latest book, my third book, K Quick, which is at your favorite bookseller now. And also follow me on Instagram or social media at Judy Joo Chef, JUDYJOO Chef.
Until next time, we will see you
Perfect.
all. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much, Shay. Thank you for my
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.